hung on the precipice of the Civil War. The other had been given to him by his mother in 1955, 2 days before his 9th birthday, just after he graduated from the Sunday Church Primary School at the First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, Queens. Its cover is embossed with his name and on the inside, signed by church officials. After taking the oath, Trump turned his back on the crowd and swung his arms open toward his family, who had encircled him as he made his vow to the American people. He first locked eyes with Ivanka, who had positioned herself directly at the center of the dais, with her brother Eric slightly behind her to her left, and her half-sister Tiffany next to him. Don Jr. was just to Ivanka's back on the other side, her half-brother Barron and stepmother turned First Lady Melania beside him. Ivanka cocked her head at her dad, the president, her lips and cheeks pulled so tightly by her smile that her facial muscles contorted themselves into an aptly bronzed rectangle. She dove forward to kiss him, but his instincts kicked in. He had never been on this sort of world stage before, but he had spent enough years with his family life chronicled in the papers to know well enough to greet his wife before his favorite daughter. So before she reached him, he swooped to his left and pecked his wife, and then worked his way through his children, Barron, Donnie, Ivanka, Eric, Tiffany, to let them congratulate him, tell him how great he'd done, how much they loved him. The family soon gathered in a motorcade for the inaugural parade. Ivanka and Jared quickly realized that their infant car seat did not fit in their armored car, an inconvenient, startlingly normal fact that held up the entire motorcade and parade on this historic day. What's the holdup? Everyone kept asking. At last, they figured it out. Everyone got moving. At 4:15 in the afternoon, following the custom President Jimmy Carter began in 1977 when he got out of his limousine and walked for more than a mile en route to the White House, Donald, Melania, and Barron stepped out of the Beast, the armored car the president travels in front of the Trump International Hotel. Elsewhere along the route, crowds were sparse and protesters had gathered. But in front of the hotel bearing Trump's name, revelers were packed onto risers, a dozen deep. There were cheers and signs and a sea of red Make America Great Again hats. Ivanka and Don Jr. and Eric and their spouses and most of their children followed in cars of their own, and once he got out of his car, walked alongside their dad, greeting the supporters who'd waited outside for hours in the 40-degree Washington winter. The family stayed outside for about 3 minutes before getting back in their cars, which moved along slowly for another half hour, until they arrived at a viewing stand near the White House. Ivanka and Jared whisked inside around sunset. None of them had expected to be there that day. When their father decided to run, and frankly, until they saw him start winning states on November 8th from the campaign headquarters on the 28th floor of Trump Tower a few months earlier, they'd assumed that he would lose and that they would go back to their normal lives and businesses. They would have spent that winter day with the broadcast of the inauguration on in the background, as they headed off for weekends at Mar-a-Lago, or at their homes in Bedminster or Westchester or the Catskills. It would have been an otherwise normal winter weekend for an otherwise perfectly happy, moneyed family trying to get back in the swing of their old normal. Apart from the fact that it meant he'd won something, Donald didn't much want to be there. As the reality of the election dawned on him in the weeks leading up to his move, he frequently asked advisors how often he could leave Washington to return to his triplex on Fifth Avenue. And in the weeks after the move, he spent most weekends flying on Air Force One down to his private club in Palm Beach. But it was not a normal weekend, and their old normal was swiftly replaced by an extraordinary new existence, one that they not only didn't predict, but also never could have imagined. Nevertheless, that is where they found themselves on January 20th. And once they were there, the Trump kids made damn sure that they were at the front and center of everything. There were thousands of things to do once the Trump family woke up bleary-eyed and bewildered on the morning of November 9th, barely a few hours after Donald gave his victory speech, scraped together with the kids' help just before they all rushed over to the ballroom at the Midtown Manhattan.